We're live. We're live. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad. I realize it's a weird day. It's Monday and it's at a weird time, but this is Christina Pratt, and this is when she could fit us into her schedule. And she's the founder of Last Mask Center, which, if you can read on your screen, you can see that. And I have not personally met Christina before, but I've read about her place, and her world is shamanism. And the reason I call them psychic profiles, because I have some astrologers who go, well, I'm not a psychic. I don't do predict. Well, no, it's using the energy like being a psychic. That's what we're talking about. So welcome to my world. Christina, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, thank you, Nancy Jean. I'm very happy to be here. These words are so problematic, right? You say something like psychic and there's all this baggage. But I think what would be valuable for us to know now, and a lot of the way I think about my exploration over the last several decades, is it's about other ways of knowing and accessing our intuition and the many ways that can express itself through human beings. Some people are stronger talking to plants. Some people are stronger talking to animals. For me, my strength has been more working in, I don't know, whatever realm we call it, that is more accurately accessed through techniques like shamanic journeying, allowed me to be more useful, not just random bits of coincidence, which is valuable. But if all we do is chase the coincidence, we'll make ourselves crazy.
Right.
Because the world is filled with coincidences. So we need to keep building as we become aware. I think we need to keep building, and all these other ways of knowing, I think, are ways we begin to shape and use the intuitive capacity that we have. And some people, one of my first and really in many ways most significant teachers was a true clairvoyant, true clairvoyant, which I am not. But man, she was. And my work with her is the core of some of the basic teaching that I offer now. And so she's one of the most important teachers in my life. But wow, that was a gift that came on as a curse for her.
Oh, it's if you cannot escape. People say, I watch some really stupid TV. My latest fascination in stupid TV is I found an art restorer. He's a conservator who fixes paintings. I was telling a friend of mine who's a psychic, she said, that just should put you to sleep. I said, no, it makes me focus on this little world he lives in and the changes he makes. And it frees me from having to worry about other stuff outside. And it's for some skills and some psychics, I know their powers are so overwhelm them that they cannot escape.
Yeah. And for me, it really hit me emotionally. I had really a very blessed childhood, and yet I was depressed at a very young age and just became more and more depressed. And really, it's just the way we are here in this developed world in the United States, which is breaking my heart on a daily basis. And I didn't have any understanding why. And the reason I ended up in this sort of world of animism and shamanism is because those are the ways of engaging my intuition that brought me relief and healing, ability to turn that pain and what was until then mostly just suffering into something that, one, wasn't suffering anymore, but two, is turning it into information that I could do something with. And that, to me, is really the value of our intuition. Is we need to be able to be useful in our world and to our communities, to all our different circles of kin. And so anyway, that's how I landed there, is because that's what actually helped me wake up out of my stupor and be useful. Yeah.
Yes. Being middle class and white in America in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yeah.
I understand that. That's where I grew up. Anyway, what we're going to do is I ask the same 20 questions of all of the readers readers, psychics, whatever they do, people, shamans, as you are. And when did you first realize you had psychic abilities?
Oh, let's see. I didn't realize what I was doing was unusual or different than what everybody else was doing for a very long time. I was the first child in my family, and so I didn't really have anything to compare myself to. So I just lived in my own little weird world, sort of going in and out of. My family spent a lot of time camping, and
Where
I
did
had
you
a lot of
grow up?
Oregon. I grew up in Oregon. So for people who've never been to Oregon, especially when I was a child, it was still a temperate rainforest. And so a child could definitely get lost in the forest and play all day long. And mom oftentimes felt like I just disappeared into the forest. But I always came back at dinner time. And I had access to a river and a park. And it was the 60s. We went out until the streetlights came on. So, it was that generation. And so I spent a lot of time just playing with nature spirits. I dreamt all the time that I could fly. That was so realistic that I browbeat my friends into saying, yes, you're flying during the day. I mean, and I just thought all this was normal. So I didn't really see it as, I don't know, abilities at all until after my depression. I started getting some skills that allowed me to come out of that and realizing, oh, I'm able to put these two things together now, like plug it in and actually get to something useful much quicker than other people in this same class that I'm in. That's when I started realizing, oh, I have a knack for this, moving in and out of these realities, as long as there's the container of a technique.
Right. How old were you when you started controlling that?
I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then was there a single aha moment, or did you finally pull enough stuff together to really get it together? And, do you have one experience that maybe coalesced your sense of your powers and how you could work with them?
Well, there was kind of both, but what I would say is, in using this basic skill set that I learned from the teacher that I was talking about, I had this sort of creeping movement towards a kind of emotional maturity and spiritual adulthood. So acting more like an adult in a culture that no longer initiates us from childhood to adulthood.
Right.
And so in a more traditional culture, that would be critical. Because I kind of cobbled that together in a messy, problematic, but meaningful way. I was, there's a Rumi quote, pounding on the golden door of God, pounding on the golden door of God in my early 20s, really asking, like, my whole life was committed to asking, why am I here? Here, what is the point? How can I be useful and have a life of meaning? Why am I here? And I was just on that question, and pulling in divination tools, pulling in yoga practices, and the practice I was already doing from my teacher, and really pulling it all together. I'd sacrificed my, I call it the run program life, like the life my white upbringing in the United States and going to college prepared me for. I left that all behind. I'd gone off to dance. I made all these innocent sacrifices of who I'd been trained to be, to open up to this possibility of being something different. And I was living in Manhattan at the time, because dancing. And I had a spontaneous event that lasted 3 days. So there was a point that my life pivoted.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then, we talked about your childhood and going. You think when you went out in the forest, now when you look back on that, because I'm becoming, even at 76, there's things that I'll go, oh my God, yeah, I know about that. That happened to me when I was really little. Are there, when you were out in the forest playing with the trees and climbing around the bushes and dealing with the water and talking to the spirits that were there, can you now remember things they were telling you that were preparing you for where you are now?
I wish.
Okay.
I wish. I think that there was a fluency back then that I've never quite recovered. And an ability to engage with more of my senses. Like I was saying about the dreams about flying, they're so real. There was seeing, hearing, smelling, feeling experience that I had as a child that I've not quite recovered as an adult yet.
Okay.
Let me say that. So there's always a possibility.
Because when you were describing those things, I do a lot of work with elementals, and they were my elementals that are closest to me were yelling at me. We used to play with her in the forest. She doesn't remember us. You will. You will. It comes around. I didn't remember playing with them either, and I found out later that I did. Okay. How did people around you react when you began to share your experiences?
That was actually really hard, I have to admit. I started actually trying to figure out how would I respond socially to meeting people when they ask what you do, which is something we do in the United States. So, what do you do? You know, is really quick part of the conversation.
Not who you are, but what you do.
Yeah, what you do. And people would literally turn on their heel and walk away. I mean, like beyond rude, just like utter, I don't even want to know you exist rejection. And it was hard. I didn't really want to go so far as lying because that's very problematic later. So it was hard in the beginning. I had to step away from my first community around this work. And so then I lost that as well. So I was very alone in the beginning. But what that did is it pushed me into relationship with the spirits.
Okay. So you needed that isolation to,
in a way,
skills. Yeah.
That's how I see it now. At the time it hurt, but
okay. We're going to talk a little bit about your journey of your development. Did you seek training?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And have you also done you told about going off on your own to kind of hone your spirits, but you would think training for you was the way to move forward.
It certainly accelerated the pace. I needed skills that I did not have, but then I also very quickly got blacklisted and kicked out of the community. So,
yeah, honey, that's par for the course.
So I think but I had the skills that I needed, the really basic skills I needed to do a better job communicating with spirit and not falling into what I think is a trap, particularly of white people, which is kind of a Messiah complex. I was much more humble, and I had some ways to engage, and my own helping spirits were constantly taking me down notches. So anyway, but I do feel the training was valuable, but then I did definitely move off into what are really my own teachings, not mine personally, but the spirits gave me this whole big download thing over 10 years. Which is what I teach from now. And that's definitely not what I learned. So I'm both. But the skills were important. I believe they are important. Yeah.
What specific tools have become part of your practice?
So the main tool, well, there's two. Okay, so the personal work piece that I feel is important in any practice that is using these other ways of knowing, because it clears us of our own internal distortion, which as people at this late stage capitalism, colonization, everything, our version of reality, especially for white, is pretty messed up. And so this ability to constantly shed those biases and recognize a truth that is coming out of like the earth or, the elementals, as you said, that's just work. It's going to be work my whole lifetime. And so what I learned from the psychic teacher is this process of energy body awareness and clearing of my own biases stuck in my energy body. And I do consider that an absolutely key teaching because it keeps my spirit work aligned and on a path of more collective truth, not my own personal, I always call it my private Idaho. It's like I don't go off into my own world. It's constantly brought back to truth as what will keep the water clean and drinkable, what keeps the air breathable, the earth, like that level of really earthbound truth. So there's that. And then the core of what makes the work even remotely close to really being shamanic is that I do work in the two journey states or two altered states that are part of traditional shamanism, which is journeying with some sort of driver that pushes you beyond where you would go through meditation, and to connect with your sort of work group of helping spirits,
Right.
randomly, whoever shows up, but this relationship that you develop over time. But then also that ability, I see them as like bookends. So the other one is that ability to get out of the way and invite those energies in to be what moves through you in space and time, if you're doing like hands-on healing or something like that, or some sort of movement based.
Oh,
like,
okay.
I do a lot of dance, actually work with dance and movement. And so it's either me going there to get their help or me staying here and inviting them in to give me help. But it's all about, how do I go get help from the spirits that are wiser and more connected to the source than I am? How do I be that? Two different kinds of being the vehicle, I guess.
Yeah. The energy that's not as tied to the earth as we are when we're born here.
Well, and our messed up ideas.
I know. You've mentioned your mentor and your teacher. What's the best piece of advice that they ever gave you?
It's not so much advice. It was more this event that she did. There are many things she did in helping me actually realize what the hell was really going on. So there was that. But in terms of really advice, she created this opportunity. I had to keep coming back from New York, back to California to work with her after I went to New York. And so I would be at these retreats that she offered, with all of her classes would come together in these retreats. And she created this experience for me to give gratitude to every single person for what I had learned from them. And then she told me to leave. And that realization that I needed to, it was like pushing me out of the nest. And so that was really the most powerful thing that she did for me, was allow me this really beautiful closure of this really important community I was part of. And then saying, you need to go. You need to go do what you're doing, 3,000 miles away, pursuing what you're pursuing, because what you need is going to happen in that, because the shamanic thing hadn't happened yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she was really, and that whole giving me a way to have this really clean, clear closure to be able to truly open to what was next was an amazing gift, like a priceless gift. And that leave was the best advice she ever gave me.
Well, that stops you from getting tied into a cultish type of behavior. How did you learn to tell the difference between your own psychic impressions and your imagination?
Well, I actually learned that from her. She was really good at teaching that, because she did teach people to do psychic readings. And she taught us within our own energy body, create a relationship with a cord of truth that runs down the center, that is grounded into the earth and connected above. So it's bigger than you. And so we're always feeling this resonance of the truth. Now, the way I translated it into my teaching now is, so it resonates with the truth, no matter whether or not you like the truth, no matter the source of the truth, and no matter the ramifications of the truth on your life. And so these are the kind of the main reasons we don't want to know the truth. And so it cultivates this very rigorous relationship with that, not the truth as in words out here, but this resonance of that thing you just heard or said is truthful. And so it's either a yes or a nothing. So it's not this big conversation about what is or isn't truth. It's just, in this moment, this is resonating with truth. And that was a big part of her teaching when you were doing readings for someone else, is to really check whether it was resonating at that more universal level of truth. And if it wasn't, to sort of work with it within yourself to realize what was getting triggered in me by reading that person, so that I could then reset and then check in with the reading again. And I only got to the level of reading with others. And so we were always also checking with each other whether we thought the thing the person had just said was truthful. So there was a lot of personal work about checking our truth with each other. So that helped. as well, especially when someone's going, yeah, that thing you think is truthful doesn't feel truthful. And you're like, okay. So there was a lot of work around that. Yeah. I appreciate that from her because it's really lasted. And I've been able to repurpose that in every other skill that I've learned in some way.
Sounds like it's a really kind of interesting way to do trust building within yourself and others to move forward. Now we're going to get to challenges and breakthroughs. Were there ever moments you doubted yourself?
Yes. I've really had some pretty hard times. And part of it is recognizing that it sort of comes with the territory. And in this work that I'm doing is the development of the ego of a contemporary person in the developed world is really not compatible with shamanism. And so that having that sort of like a glacier, large chunks scaling off and breaking away, I think is part of the territory. That doesn't mean I enjoy it and go there joyfully, and doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but because it's the nature of this work to have that, it's sort of embedded in the process of becoming a practitioner. I feel like I'm always more refined towards the service on the other side of it.
Okay. Well, how do you handle skepticism? And there's two skeptics in our lives, ourselves and then those on the outside. So I'm asking about both those skeptics.
It is interesting for me, at least, because I have a school. I have an online school. I have an in-person school. I have 10 years of podcast archives. I mean, I got a lot of stuff in the world that's pretty significant. And I can be at a conversation with people that would be like similar to me, but in their field, dismissed outright as woo-woo. Just boom. And I actually bring a lot of science into what I do. I love science. I love the physical world and reality. And I actually think our spiritual work needs to also be activism. So, I'm pretty grounded in the real world. And I just to get dismissed like that outright, not even skepticism, just no interest at all is hard to take, but understandable. And not remotely as damaging as the internal one. Right? I mean, it may hurt, it may be a little slap there, but the internal skeptic is the one that can often, distort us from the truth that we know. And it takes a great deal of courage, I think, to recognize the truth within ourselves and what is ours to do, and to speak up and to do it. And so the inner skeptic piece is one, it's a piece of noticing around that relationship with truth. The inner skeptic doesn't ever really go away. But one of the things I learned, the more I do it anyway, I don't wait for the skepticism, internal skepticism to be gone. I just go do it anyway. And the more I've gone to do it anyway, and the what has been done has been good, has been a benefit, has been amazing sometimes, it just gives me more data to argue with it. Right? The more ignoring it has worked, I can go, last time I ignored you, it turned out pretty great. So I'm going to ignore you this time too. So, but I think that's different from actually listening to criticism. Because I feel like, you know what I mean?
Well, people used to say to me, well, what about, when you think things inside? And I said, I have said things inside my head to me about what I do, that if any stranger or even a person I knew relatively well had walked up and said it to me, I'd have slapped them. But, it's harder when it's inside. So what I do is I give it the space to say what it wants to say. And I said, thank you for contributing. Goodbye. And you have to, because there might be some tiny element of maybe this isn't the time to move on that. We have to keep ourselves open to all of our options.
And I feel like for me, a lot of learning to use, particularly the shamanic skills, because they're very task focused, is learning what to pay attention to, where your attention goes, and then what you pay attention to, gains more substance, and what you're ignoring starts to. And I find a lot of it has to do with shifting my attention internally. I think it's important, though, if I'm going to listen to people's compliments, I also have to at least listen to the criticism. And I hold these energies in what I call my hypothesis space. And it's a hypothesis. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Let me engage with it and see whether there is something I need to learn here or not. But not to just dismiss things outright. Because I think people that only listen to their compliments and ignore all their criticism lose a big opportunity to grow.
Yeah, I used to work in politics, and I had a lot of politicians that never wanted to hear the negative side. I said, you got to hear what they're saying if you're going to be able to understand what's happening around you.
But I think that you're really right. That inner critic is, I don't know,
she's
really mean. Yeah.
Okay, YouTube, turn your sensors off. She's the bitch for me in my life.
Yeah. And so there's a level that you're just like, you're just too mean. I'm not going to listen to you. If you were, like you said, if you were a person outside of me, I wouldn't actually listen to you. So.
One of the things I learned is if a voice really hits me as strident and I'm like, that's not me, I'll listen. And if I listen carefully, I'll hear the voice that said it to me and I'll dismiss them because they're no longer here.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of working with those kind of inner voices in the practice I learned from the clairvoyant in my early life. So I have, sort of a daily practice to work with that inside my inner energy body. And the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
have your abilities gone through strong and weak phases? And could you tie anything to that?
Oh, definitely. Interestingly, one of the most interesting times, at least for me, I'm kind of a nerd about what I do. Long story that I won't bother with, but for reasons that were guided by spirit, the answer to the big problem I was having in creating a certain kind of sustainability in my life was that I needed to develop a sense of community around the work that I was doing. It's a 4-year training. It's kind of a big deal. And to have people do that and then just all fall away, it was just too much dispersal of the energy. And it was too hard for people to sustain the learning on their own. So started to build community. And as we began to build community, I didn't see these things together at the time, but as the community grew more coherent, my capacity to access my helping spirits to do my healing work diminished. And this happened over a year or two. So I didn't really see that they were, one was going up and the other was going down and that they were related. But I finally got to a place where I couldn't work. As I couldn't access my helping spirits because it's not about me. It's about me being a vehicle for the helping spirits to access and help the client. And so I couldn't access them. And I finally just had to stop and ask what was going on and explore what happened. What is going on? And what they explained is that in an indigenous culture, every adult would have a relationship with all of the helping spirits in the cosmology of that cultural story of how the reality works.
Right.
And then their own personal helping spirits, their family helping spirits, their ancestors, the land. Like every adult would be maintaining those relationships for themselves. And then the community relationship that is then the collective that's created when all the grown-ups are doing that. And then, of course, children are being initiated in their teenage years, so it's not a big adolescence. And then they're picking up that responsibility for those relationships. That's how it's supposed to be working. But I had a bunch of, developed, capitalist, colonized white people. They were all using my energy. The spirits. And so this huge community built, not huge, but this community built and just sucked all the energy out of my relationship because none of them had their own. They didn't really have their own relationship with the land, with the elements, with the cosmology itself and all the teachers in the cosmology. They only had a relationship with their own sort of personal primary helping spirit, not a relationship with their own ancestors. So that's when I said, yeah, okay, y'all, time out. We can't do this. We have to regroup how we're doing this because I need to work. And I don't mean that because I need money. I personally need to do the work It
Yeah.
keeps you
Well,
right.
you can't be the battery everybody charges off of and get nothing back. I mean,
So that the depth of which that dynamic is true about what would be happening if adults were actually picking up their responsibility for a full and flourishing relationship with spirit, with the nature around them, with the land, with their ancestors, all these different dimensions that we explore in a sort of animist shamanic life, it's a totally different world. And
mhm.
so a lot of my dips in my own energy have come from that dynamic between myself and my work and community.
Right. I agree. And then let's see. How do you protect your energy?
Well, I have a lot of different things that I do, to be
I
honest.
imagine you would. Shamans usually do.
Yeah. I have a lot of things that I do, but one of the things that I came to learn, and I came about this the hard way because, again, I got kicked out of my group with my teachers. So I haven't had a lot of human being shamanic teachers. What I came to understand by not having it is the value of our own bloodline ancestors as protection in the physical world. So there's a way, I guess, like the practical way I would say it is, there's a way that our human being helping spirits understand the challenges of being a human being with an intricacy that maybe water spirit or tiger spirit or mountain spirit doesn't quite
Mhm.
get.
Mhm.
Like, we can certainly call on that energy to assist us, but there's also just a part of, like, like a tiger. Well, why don't you just bite them? It's like, well, I'm human, can't bite them. A lot
Mhm.
of times the answers for me, it's like, great. Could I have an answer that doesn't involve me needing to sprout wings? Like, it's
Right.
just like, I'm just a human. And so for me, my practices begin anchored, actually. So there's my ancestral shrine right behind me.
Mhm.
Begins in the morning with a network of prayers and practices with that shrine, calling the ancestors in to protect me. I happen to be married, so I call in through the vow of that bond to my partner's ancestral helping spirits. Like, why should mine do all the work, right?
Yeah, we can borrow them wherever we can get them.
Right. And then I go out from there to the cosmology and to my helping spirits and make sure that's all anchored in the land. And so there's a whole sort of practice that opens the day and then a practice that ends the day. And if I'm having trouble sleeping, I remember to do my practice that is about asking for the same protection in sleep and in dreams. And I go
Mhm.
through phases of needing help with that and not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think there's always times when we feel, when I teach tarot or numerology or work with crystals and stuff, I teach people a prayer to cleanse the environment they're in so they're not opening. Because when you open yourself up to bring new things in, there's no guarantee that that new thing's going to be your best friend.
Exactly.
And I mean, I know for a fact, I talked to a person for whom you did get out of an abusive spirit and out of his life. And he'd gotten a curse put on him, I think he said. Yeah. So, and I believe all those things can happen to people, but, I just set it to a group of class and, they either use it or they don't. I can't go in their living rooms and make them do it. And this woman said, I saw that on when I was going through my workbook and I said, oh, I think I'll just say this and see what happens. So she said it. And then she opened up her eyes and she went, this room looks lighter. And it's a room where she did all her readings and her work with stuff. And she said, so she went around her whole house. Now, this is during COVID. She went around her whole house and out in her back porch. And, when it was just saying, cleanse this, do this, it's the violet flame where they swoop through and they gather up all the bad stuff, take it away, and bring back good energy. And 2 days later, a friend of hers, and she said, I only had 2 or 3 people that ever came in and out of my house because it was during COVID, right? And this woman walked in and she goes, did you change the drapes? Did you let workmen in here? Did you change your lighting? And she said she thought it was her mind. And then she told her friend. And so her friend said, give me that prayer. And her friend went home and did it. And she said, damn, this thing works. And I don't think people understand there's just a residual of sludge.
Mm-hmm.
that comes toward us in our life. And unless we come up, and some people just do it. I mean, I've talked to readers who said, I've never had a ritual in my life and my space is clear. Fine. That's their thought. Maybe it is. But I surround myself before I even get out of bed in the morning with an egg that protects me from any energy I bump into, because I've had a bad habit of picking up the bad guys. I'm like the kind of girl that could go in a bar and there's 99 guys that are great and there's one schlud. Guess which one I found. Okay.
It's like the flotsam and jetsam of life. There's just junk everywhere. And you either, and it can get attached to us. It doesn't mean it's all something we have to process, but it's certainly something I think we need to clear. And I think people also don't realize how vulnerable they are to things that resonate with internal issues they're carrying around and not addressing.
Right.
So there's that piece as well, that I feel like the most powerful thing I can do to keep upgrading my own protection, and thus the ability for prayers and blessings and spirit to protect me, is cleaning up my internal space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And how has your work changed your worldview or beliefs about life and death?
Let's see. How has it beliefs about life and death? It's interesting because I do a lot of work with ancestors and the dead. So, so I feel like it's like life and death. Oh, there's this whole world that happens after death. But what's changed is I have come to understand how far away, in spite of my childhood spent running around out in nature and growing up and now living again, because I'm back in Oregon now, one of the most beautiful places on the planet, on this beautiful planet, is I still was not connected to the earth. I was still not connected to the land in the way the first peoples of this place would mean that. Those very few that are left, given our policies of the United States government. And so that's been perhaps the biggest change, is me understanding. It's like two things. On one hand, it feels like downshifting out of the moving forward quality of the developed world, essentially. So downshifting out of that, but then also really redirecting my energy towards doing other things. It's not just, oh, I'm just going to be. I have to undo who I became and redo a person that actually has a relationship with the land. So that has been, and continues to be, probably one of the biggest changes, because it ultimately means I need to continue to sacrifice ways that I am in the world that are common and other people share. It's not like these are bad things I'm doing. It's just things that I'm doing that really aren't sustainable. And then ultimately need to keep redirecting my energy, my skills, my choices when I shop, my choices when I eat, my choices about like all of these choices about how I live towards continuing to support this relationship with the earth.
Right.
And so that is an ongoing adventure of discovery, but necessary, and very much there's nothing really to ground the shamanic practice in without the animism that it is ultimately rising out of. So that has been valuable, always valuable, and really joyful.
Oh yeah, when you connect to the earth, it's just so like, oh my God, that's what was missing. And then it's like when you feel psychically connected and everything's really buzzing and you feel really good, and those things don't hold and last forever. And that's the problem. I mean, because we've still got to go back and do other things like eat and cook and go to stores and things.
So life and death, the change in life and death is it's helped me understand the importance of how we tend death so that people are actually able to leave here and complete that journey and potentially come back as what I call good, true, and beautiful ancestral helping spirits.
Right.
But that also then means, and this is what I've seen more through my healing practice, we also should be tending birth.
Yeah.
So then that also means, all of this would be a whole lot easier if we were actually tending that initiation right in the middle between childhood into adulthood. And so that that's what's really changed for me in all of this work and the research in writing the encyclopedia and doing the podcast and all these things that I've done,
Mhm.
is really recognizing these gates of life are really powerful, really energetic transitions from essentially no form into form, whatever the hell it means to actually be
Mhm.
in form, right? Like, what does that really mean when there's no real here? It's all just energy. So there's that. And then this transition from child learning brain into
Mhm.
adult, and then that transition back out of form into energy, and how when we don't tend those gates, things go bad quickly. And we're living in the results of it right now, particularly now in the United States. So that seems to me one of the most key things that I've learned.
And most people are so historically illiterate that they don't realize that what we call childhood, that period of time, that didn't exist until the Industrial Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then even in then the children got out and worked, and then there got to be a point where they said, oh, well, maybe we ought to teach them how to read. And they created this false thing called childhood separate from the family, where we're going to send them to school, someone else is going to be responsible. I mean, it's a whole lot of all that goes on. And one of the things I did since COVID was I got very, very literate on European and Western history, and also in China. In China, they used to take children from families and swap them with other families in certain parts so that they would learn. But they treated childhood as a different thing. But for a long period of times in history, childhood, there was no such thing as a childhood. You're born, and as soon as you're able to stand on 2 feet, you're out threshing the wheat and doing the stuff.
Well, I think in shamanic cultures, childhood is more, it's definitely a time of learning how to be useful in your community.
Mhm.
So you're out there working, but it's not like work the way we
It's
like
not enslavement. It's you do what you can
learning
do.
to hunt, learning to gather, learning how we survive in this environment. How do we weave? How do we do what we do to survive?
Mhm.
But there is in a shamanic culture in childhood, there is a difference because children are very connected to spirit,
Mhm.
not responsible for that relationship. The adults are meant to be responsible for tending the child's dynamics with
Mhm.
spirit. So in many cultures, a kid would be asked in the morning, so what did you dream last night?
Yes.
Really make sure that we're bringing through the wisdom that's coming through the children's dreams because they're so connected, but also making sure they're dreaming with the right energies and not some funky business going on at nighttime.
Yeah, they were aware that there was that side of the
So
dream.
there's that sense, and then what's happening, there's no adolescence, but what's happening at initiation into adulthood in those teenage years, we would call this long prolonged adolescence,
Mhm.
is initiation into adulthood. And the primary change is two things that are very different from our lives. One, 100% responsibility for your relationship with spirit now. You got
Mhm.
to start using your skills and maintaining responsibility for that dynamic, which is why a vision quest is often part of that,
Mhm.
or helping spirit to start acting like a grown-up. But the other piece of that is part of that initiation is letting your parents off the hook for everything you believe they owe you and everything you think they owe them. So there's no continuing through your 20s and your 30s to process your issues with your dysfunctional family. It's done. You
Mhm.
get through that kind of initiation without letting it go, and recognizing your mother is something much larger like the earth. Your father is something much larger like the sky, and that you live in this cosmology of your people, and you let your human parents off the hook, and you let yourself off the hook and move forward as an adult in the community. So it's a very different, it is a very different relationship with childhood. What does that mean?
Mhm.
Our responsibility as adults to the children, and then what is your responsibility once childhood is over and now you're an adult? So it's very different dynamic. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. And what's the most powerful? The way I've put it in my question is reading, but you don't do readings. But what is one of the most powerful work things that you've ever done with another person, an interaction you've had with them?
Well, it's a tricky question because I often do things, big ritual things with many people, often
Okay.
sort of
Okay.
dance
That
rituals.
we'll take that. We'll
Yeah.
take that.
So, because probably one of the coolest things was that. However, there are times in shamanic healing, because it is something that is best addressed through that technique, which is not everything. I don't believe that shamanism solves everything at all. But when it's the thing someone needs, it comes off like a miracle. And that is pretty cool. So,
yeah, that is.
it's very cool but that's true really for anything. When it is the thing the person needs, it allows the change to happen that they're looking for, and it feels miraculous to them. And that's why we do these things. Okay. But the most powerful thing that I have done is something called a conjure dance. And very simply, the setup is we need to conjure something. We need to create something. So we want to manifest a vision, in other words. And so we discern who are all the stakeholders in that vision, which includes the earth and the ancestors, like the whole big deal, stakeholders. And then the way we do it is everybody draws from the bowl, like what stakeholder they get. And then that's the stakeholder they surrender themselves to dance. And so then everybody does this movement-based free movement, usually for an hour to 2 hours. But you keep track of the interactions that you're having in the dance. Who do you dance with? When do you dance with? What's being called? The dance is sort of guided. So maybe it's ask the stakeholder to show you through the movement where the source of love comes from for this stakeholder. And then you notice who you end up dancing with. After that conjure dance, you interpret all the dances and you start recognizing what you've been told about how all the stakeholders need to interact to manifest the vision, by noticing, like I was dancing with Nancy Jean when I was dancing, where does the stakeholder resource the love? Well, I was dancing the earth and Nancy Jean was dancing water. And so, we're learning about the land and the water. So that kind of conjure dance has helped us manifest massive visions, which our brains really can't do the way like a corporation manifests a vision. Like we can't, it's too big. But it allows us to work with spirit in a way that we can stay out of the way and do the human parts we need to do. Let spirit do the spirit parts and keep the vision on track so that it is aligned with right relationship with all things. So that is really powerful and really cool.
That's a wonderful practice.
And people that don't know anything about it, like we do it at community gatherings where we have friends and family come. So friends and family that don't know anything about us, they're just there to support their person, join in the dance and dance a stakeholder and share with us and bring in information that can guide us for years. So it's very cool.
That is. I've done some psychodrama, and it's like that, but it's with drama, not dance. When I was younger, and I could have maybe done 2 hours of dance. I don't think I could do 2 hours of dance. Do you? How do you deal with sensitive and complex messages? If you get a really complex message about someone, how do you bridge that to the person?
Well, there's a couple ways. So live in the session, because I narrate as I'm going, so I'm actually not really editing. So that can be problematic because it's real time. Often the helping spirits give me the complex message in a metaphor that's got levers and, it's like it's fairly complex. And the complexity is played out in the mechanics of the image that's being described and how the energies interface that. So and then the whole image is really, and the dynamic in it is just the message versus like one of the healing forms I do a lot of is soul retrieval, where the energy that I'm finding is literal and it needs to be engaged with and brought back in a certain way. But this is more like the person in an image, but then the dynamic is standing on the point of a pole, and the energies are coming from here and keep trying to knock you off. And then you keep grabbing this energy to not fall off. But that energy is the problematic energy. So what are the two energies coming this, so this sort of unfolding question by question, complex image sort of allows the person step by step to go, oh, yeah, that does really actually describe all this complexity that I'm experiencing. And then because it's an image with, actionable parts, where do we begin to unravel this?
Right.
And so that's really helpful for people that way. Complex messages, the other way that I deal with it is I do an intake that I don't actually need to do.
Oh, okay.
But I do in the intake, what I'm really trying to find out is, what do you know about yourself? Like, how much do you know about the dysfunction in your family? How much do you know about the abuse and the trauma that you've experienced? How much do you know that? So what are you really prepared to hear? And sometimes I'll just ask people outright because they're being so, correct languagey that I can't really tell what they're saying.
It's called evasion.
Yeah. It's like, I just say, do you realize that what you're talking about is abuse? Be really direct before I get into the work, because I need to figure out, what is this person ready to hear? And so if someone absolutely knows, for example, trigger alert everyone, but they actually know that they have been physically raped. If they know that and they want the repair around that event, then I can talk about it pretty openly. But if someone doesn't know at all, I'm going to talk about the energy of, there's some sort of energy of violation here. And because violation, I mean, people can violate your mental space with trying to, jam cultish ideas into your head. So it's really open then for them to discover, with the energy that comes back, what that violation was in their own time.
Right.
That is organic in their own natural healing process, instead of shoving it at them when they're not ready to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a certain amount of that going on in our country right now, don't we? Okay. We're getting to the advice and inspiration part. And this is the reason I started this thing, is to try and help people. I have so many people that are opening up, and all of a sudden, I know all this stuff. Now what do I do with it? And you know how to do it. Well, I've been doing it since I was 12 and on my conscious level, and then it ends up was very good. But so what would you say to someone who's starting to explore their gifts?
At this stage, I would say to people, you have access to gifts, not gifts, but you're, at this time, we have access to information without actually going on the journey to get there. So one thing I would say is go on the journey. Yeah. Learn the skills, learn the basics, really make sure that you understand a strong foundation, and that as you go forward, your physical body is not being wrecked by what you're doing. Right. Because that's a good sign that what you're doing is outstripping your capacity. Because we do have the ability to access things. We are not ready. And the important thing about that is, just because you can access it doesn't mean you can interpret it accurately. So if we're way over our heads, we're probably not actually interpreting it accurately. So I encourage people, even though you can do it, it doesn't mean you should. That is the lesson of Jurassic Park. Okay? So learn the basics and make sure that as you go forward, you are tending your physical health and well-being. And that will usually pace people in a healthy way. And then once you start to get a sense of what it is, find a teacher. Either physical or spiritual, but find a teacher and devote to a practice. It doesn't really matter what it is, but devote to a practice. Don't just be random, whatever, anywhere, cobbled together, quilt with whatever ideas you like, because we always leave out the discomfort piece, which is where we're learning and growing. And so devote to a practice, so you get the parts that make you feel ecstatic and fabulous, and the parts that make you uncomfortable, because that's your growth place. And if you only go with what feels good and your preference, you will miss the growth. And so that's what I encourage people to do. Good.
And what daily, I know you talked about, you have your family and your ancestors on the earth, and what other daily exercises would you recommend for someone that's maybe just starting out?
Well, I haven't actually said this yet, which is very odd, but I am all about that love is really actually the factor that holds everything together here. It's what allow us to come into manifestation. And it is actually one way or another going to be the source of our solutions. And so for me, I think it is important, especially in this time, because it takes so much courage to do the right thing these days, even to figure out what the right thing is and then to do it. Is I think we need to physically, exercise our heart. We need to walk at least. We need to take care of our hearts because we're really drawing on it if we're starting to move into these alternative ways of knowing. And if we don't take care of I've seen so many exquisite spiritual teachers die of different heart diseases. Suddenly, just like that person died. What happened? And their heart just gives out. I think it's really important to take care of your heart physically. Like your body is your vehicle for what you're doing. So I think that is really important. For me, I need to do Qigong because I need to manage my energy in my relationship because I kept tanking every so many years. I would tank around energy because my practice was draining you more than I was cultivating. And that is really common in our contemporary world to be outstripping our energy all the time, always moving at 110%. So for me, I have a cardio, very physical cardio practice. I have an energetic Qigong practice. And then I have all my spiritual practices that are more about connecting with the energies that I work with. And that doesn't mean I spend 4 hours a day just doing my practices. I do different things on different days, and I lean into the spirit practices that I'm going to be drawing on in that day. That's how I kind of manage all the different dynamics of those relationships. And now, because I am older, I also do a physical practice to help maintain my balance, like to really maintain like well-being in my physical body as I'm aging. So I've added a whole nother layer that I didn't used to have to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to fall down the stairs, basically. I mean, it's like, I'm still a human. Yeah. I'm still aging.
Tomorrow I go to get a test I've never heard about before, but he said, well, you're 75, you should have it. And it tests the structure of your nerves out to the fingers and toes.
Yeah. I mean,
he said it won't hurt. And speaking of my heart, I was supposed to die last June and I was given the option to stay or go. And I chose to stay, but my heart had blown up and my lungs had stopped breathing. And they said, get the message, and I got the message. So I rested and I'm back. I'm back, guys. I'm going nowhere. You all know that. Okay.
And it's very hard when they use our physical body.
They're not light on us. They make sure we don't miss the message.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your psychic journey? And this is the last question.
Oh, it would be about love. It would be about, like all of this psychology, all of this drama, all of this there's so much drama and it distracts us from the actual process here. So learning to discern the difference between drama, because it's so compelling, and the actual process, which is not so dramatic, but moves us forward, and that what we are here to do is love. And how we do that is what is interesting and diverse. But and I don't mean personal love, loving your partner, that very personal human being love. I mean, your kin is everywhere and they are kin. And how do we develop a loving, respectful, dynamic, energy flowing kind of relationship with things that are in form, things that are not in form, and all this life around us? And honestly, eradicating the diversity of life on Earth is not how we do that. Climate crisis is not how we do that. So these are are places where we're seeing we don't understand love. And we need to listen to the energies that come through these other ways of knowing and this psychic awareness when it's helping us really understand what love is and how that works here in the world. It is not judgmental. It is not shaming. That judgmental, smiting God is not teaching you about love, because that isn't what love does. Love takes a lot of courage, though. and a lot of connection and
Yeah, it
intimacy.
does. And that making yourself open.
Absolutely.
Well, you're founder of the Last Mask Center. Is that how people can reach you? Is through there? Okay.
lastmaskcenter.org. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming by. And we have a lot of people from the Northwest that were watching you today. I guess your football team won?
Yeah, the Seahawks won. How about that?
Woo! Good for you. Well, everybody, you have a good day. I don't pay attention to that stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for coming, and I really enjoyed speaking with you. Bye-bye.
Nancy Jean.